Hello class, this is Professor King. I wanted to start back with the Chapter 6 practice file that we went over in lecture class today. I want to point out that this is directly related to your Chapter 6 grader project, so you're probably going to want to participate in this file and walk through it with me. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is you are going to need to open your own grader file and work from that file, not to use this one right here. So you'll notice that this file has some text boxes with instructions in it. It also has 3 header rows that you'd have to take out in order to use this for your grader project. So it'll be much simpler if you just download the grader project and open it from there. But this is the one that we worked on in class. The reason that I've chosen to do this for you is it's come to my attention, and I've sort of figured out as we've gone through the semester that not always can you translate what's done in Pearson into the way that I would ask things. So I want to point out that this is the way I would ask the questions if I were asking you to do this project. I wouldn't give you the step-by-step instructions as Pearson does. Instead, I would just give you scenarios, or I would just ask you questions, or I would say just use goal seek or create a 1 variable or 2 variable data table. I'm not going to ever give you the step-by-step instructions of how to do that. So it's important that you practice with Pearson, that you understand the step-by-step instructions, but again, those aren't going to come from me. This looks much more like my direction, so please take that in mind as you go through this. When we take a look at this worksheet, we realize that this is a dance committee using this worksheet to track the fundraising event for their Valentine's Day dance. And you'll notice that the dance committee has calculated their total income, their total expenses, and their net profit. So I would like to point out this field is called balance, and your grader project calls it balance. For my purposes, because I'm an accountant, I've changed balance to net profit, but as you're walking through, make sure that you realize you should call it what Pearson asks you for. I have created it to make a little more sense to me. Again, the steps are the same, just make sure you pay attention to the details. So let's get started. This says the dance committee is using this worksheet to track ticket prices, revenues, and expenses for their upcoming Valentine's Day dance. Please use Goal Seek to achieve a net profit by changing the ticket price per person. So we want to change the ticket price per person, which is in my worksheet in cell B12, and we want to use Goal Seek to figure out what ticket price, based on all of these parameters, would allow for a $0 net profit. So we will go to the Data tab to find the What If Analysis portion of the Data tab in the ribbon, and we're going to say Goal Seek. Goal Seek is going to bring up this box that says, okay, what cell do you want to set? Well, I want to set cell in my worksheet, C37, but it's the net profit or the balance cell. I want to set that value to 0, and I want to do that simply by changing one thing. I want to do that by changing the value of the ticket price per person. So a couple ways you can do this. You can type these in here. You can type C37. You can click on C37, B12, whatever cells your values happen to be in, but you can just click around this worksheet. You can also click on this database, this worksheet icon, and it'll take you so you can just select things on the worksheet icon. Either way is fine. When you click OK, you'll watch Excel calculate, and it goes up to $88.98 based on my parameters here. If I change the number of attendees, this ticket price per person would obviously be different, but it's using whatever I have currently on this sheet to make an assumption about what the ticket price should be. So that's kind of cool. You can use that to figure out various things as you go through this class, to figure out your grade, to figure out lots of things by changing one variable. Next, it says the committee would like to use a 1 variable data table to calculate the total income, total expenses, and net profit for the guest range from 200 to 500 in 20 guest increments. So what this means is this is a 1 variable data table. It's a 1 variable data table because it has one variable. A variable is something that changes. You know that from finite math, from algebra. But a variable is something that changes. So here we could have 200 guests. We could have 220 guests, so on and so forth, all the way down to 500. The easiest way to get from 200 to 500 in this row of variables is to type 200 and 220, grab the fill handle and drag it down so it fills to 500. Again, when you're filling a series, Excel's default is to step by 1. So if you want it to step by something other than 1, you have to tell it the first two things so it knows the increment. So that's the reason we type 200 and then 220 to fill this all the way down. A one variable data table is very useful. It uses one variable to calculate multiple formulas or multiple outcomes. So it uses one variable to calculate multiple outcomes. Here we want to calculate the total income, total expenses, and net profit based on the change in number of attendees. So here we will put what we want to calculate across the top of this one variable data table. Here we want to calculate total income, which happens to already be down here for us. Calculate total income. I want to calculate total expenses. And I want to calculate net profit, which is currently 0 because we just calculated that with GoalSeek to be 0. I want to point out what is represented by this total income. So if I double click on this total income, I have student club contributions plus ticket revenue equals total income. And that makes sense. If I go over to ticket revenue, you'll notice I have number of attendees times ticket price per person. That makes sense as well. So what it's doing is someone has set up this worksheet to calculate formulas and functions to calculate the ticket revenue from this dance that we're having based on ticket prices and number of attendees. The only reason this one variable data table works is because these truly are formulas or functions that I'm capturing. The directions continue that say, for user understandability, please mask the formulas in F5 to H5 with what the formulas represent. So what it wants us to do, instead of showing these numbers here, it wants this cell to say what this represents. So it wants me to mask it or make it say that it is total income. The way that you do that is on the Home tab. You know, you can change this from general to currency. You can change it to be a variety of things. You can sometimes change it to a date. You can change it to text. You can change it to, anything. Well, I want to change it to have a mask. So to make it have a mask, I'm going to go to More Number Formats. And then when my box pops up, I'm going to select Custom. When I select Custom, here in this box, I can type a quotation mark and then total income. And you'll remember that the quotation marks tell Excel that I'm typing text. So you'll see the sample comes up, total income, and I'll click OK. This box now says total income. That's what it says when somebody views it. But what it actually represents is this total income or this named box here. So really and truly there's a number here, but it just shows total income. It asked me to mask the rest, so I'll do it quickly. More Number Formats, Custom, by typing total expenses. And the last one I will mask as net profit. Just so you understand, that's not how I do it. Just so you understand what you're looking at in this one variable data table. It makes it easier to read for someone who hasn't created the worksheet. It's very necessary. It's a very nice thing for you to do, is to tell people what they're looking at here in this one variable data table. So let's talk again in big picture what a one variable data table is. It is calculating these three separate formulas, total income, total expenses, and net profit, based on me changing this number of attendees. So this is how many people are coming to my dance. What would these three formulas be if I changed this over and over? Now I could go over here and I could change it from 200 to 220 back to 400, and I could go through and I could calculate all of these different values. And you'll notice when I type 200, this cell changes. So right now at 200, it's 26,295. If I go back to 400, it changes to 44,090. I could physically go through and recalculate these and look at all of these different answers, but I don't want to do that. I want a data table to tell me all of that information at once, which is very, very helpful. So to actually create this data table, you're going to want to select all of the data table, including the formulas and the variables. Don't select this top bar that says one variable data table. That's not helpful. But the formulas or the functions you're trying to calculate, as well as the variables. You will by default get this one empty box right here because you can't select a square without getting it. But I point it out because it's going to be very useful in our two data variable table. So you're going to make sure you start in this box and drag all the way through your table. Then you'll go to the data tab, back over here to this what if analysis, and this time we're going to do a data table. Our data table only asks us for two options. It says either you have a row input cell or a column input cell. So here's where a lot of students and a lot of users of Excel get really confused. Are my variables in a row or are they in a column? Currently, they're set up where they're displayed in a column. So my variables are in one single column. So all of my variables go here. So I have a column input cell that I have to calculate. The column input cell, what this means in the data table is where, when I'm calculating these three formulas, where do you want me to change these variables? Well, I want to change the variables here at number of attendees. I want all of these variables to be plugged in as a number of attendees, and I want it to calculate these three different results. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to get to. So that's how I set that up. I'll simply click OK. When I click OK, you will notice that each individual box gives me a solution. And so what's happening for each individual solution is it's calculating based on if I put these in this box. So you'll notice the break even here at 400, net profit is 0. I know that because I use GoalSeek to find the ticket price per person that would create that. So that's what happened here. Our next item that we're going to figure out is that there are two variable tables. So the next thing we need to figure out is the committee would like to use a two variable data table to calculate net profit based on the same change in guests as well as changing ticket prices. Please change ticket prices from $50 to $100 in $10 increments. So I want to do the same number of guests. So I'm just going to select these. I'm going to push Command C on my Mac, Control C on your PC, and I'm going to paste. So Command V or Control V, depending on which machine you're using. But then it says I want to change the ticket price. And I want to change the ticket price from $50 to $100 in $10 increments. So here I'll have 50, the next increment is 60, so on and so forth. So I want to do all the way to 100. So now I have two variables in my two variable data table. And my variables are ticket price and number of attendees. And this time I only want to calculate net profit. So this box that I talked about being empty in the one variable data table now isn't empty because I have two variables that I need to calculate one formula from. So my equal sign, net profit, here we go, or balance. And I'm going to mask this again to say net profit so I understand what it is. Again, remember for your grader, I think it asks you to call it balance. I don't like balance, so I'm calling it net profit. But it's just as easy to change. You go through the same steps to get there. You can make it say whatever you need it to say. So net profit. So this two variable data table is going to take ticket price changes and number of attendee changes and display net profit. So to do this, again, you simply select both of your variables, including your formula. Go to the Data tab. You're going to do What If Analysis Data Table again. This time it's asking for row and column cell input. So again, I remember that in my column, I have number of attendees. So I know my column input cell is going to be number of attendees. What's my row input cell? Across my row, I have changing ticket prices, which would mean ticket price per person is going to be the input cell based on the changes in my ticket prices. So remember, your input cell is wherever it's actually using to recalculate these formulas that you're trying to capture over here in the raw data. And simply click OK. And then you'll get all of these different functions, the ones that are not functions, results. All of these that are in brackets are negative numbers, meaning we lose money. We only make money down here in this lower right-hand corner where these are positive. So it says the committee, please change ticket price. Again, for user understandability, please mask the formula in E24, which we did. Please highlight the three scenarios closest to break even without creating a deficit. So what that means is it wants to know the three lowest positive dollar amounts. So without creating a deficit, how close can I come to break even? That's how I figure that out. And it wants me to color those, and I believe that your grader project says red accent to 60%. So I'll just go ahead and use that because I believe that's what it asked for. Next, we have a what if analysis. So up in the data tab under what if analysis, we have three options. We have scenario manager, GoalSeek, and data table. We've done GoalSeek, we've done data table. Now we're going to go to scenario manager. I'm going to go ahead and delete these two so that I can create them again. We have a scenario manager. So for each of the following scenarios, please change number of attendees, caterer cost per person, ticket price per person, and ballroom rental. Deselect prevent changes and create these 4 scenarios. So we're going to create 4 scenarios. We'll start with scenario name, and this one's going to be 500 attend. If I could spell today, sorry. By changing cells. So I want to change the cells related to number of attendees, and I'm going to hold down command as I select these. Number of attendees, caterer meal cost per person, ticket price per person, and ballroom rental. So I have those 4 cells selected, and I'll go back. And I don't want to do any comments, and I'm going to uncheck prevent changes and click OK. So for B7, it wants me to enter 500. For the next one, 1595. Let's make sure it's holding my values. It is. For B12, this time it wants me to enter 75. I'm getting these numbers from right over here. They go in order. B27, 1250, and I click OK. I'm going to click the plus button or add another one, and I'm going to do the same thing. 400 attend. I don't have to change my changing cells box. It's going to remember those for me. Uncheck prevent changes and go OK. This time I need 400. I need 17.95. I need 85. And I need 12,500. And I'll click add. I'm going to do another one, 300 attend. Same cells, uncheck prevent changes, and this time I need 300. I need 1995. I need 90. And last I need 11,995. And I'll click one more to add my last scenario, 200 attend, same cells, uncheck prevent changes. This time 200, 22.95, 95, and 11,995. So then I'll click OK. And you'll notice I have 5 scenarios. So what we're going to do here says generate a scenario summary using total income, total expenses, and net profit as a result. So we'll click Summary. We want to create a summary, and our result cells, it already has them selected. It knows what I wanted, but if it didn't, I would want to select total income, total expenses, and net profit as my result cells and click OK. You'll notice now I get this new tab that has the results of my scenario. So this is what the current values are. If 500 people attend, I get these balances. If 200 attend, so on and so forth. So it's just a quick way to manage my scenarios. The last thing that we're going to cover here is the solver. So first you want to make sure that you have solver in your data tab. So if you have a Mac, it's going to show up like this. If you don't, it's going to show up as just a listing. You'll have probably Analysis Toolpack and Solver here. If you don't have it and you're on a Mac, you go to the Tools menu, you go to Add Excel Add-ins, and you'll check Analysis Toolpack and or Solver. So I'll get both of them. Now I have both of them that show up. If you're on a PC, it's a little different. You're going to click the File button. You're going to go down to Options. You're going to click on Excel add-ins, and then you can select Solver that way. Sorry, I can't show you. I'm not on a PC, but I showed you that one in class, so hopefully that helps. We're going to use the solver to find the highest possible net profit using the number of attendees and the ticket price per person as variables. We're going to set logical constraints for ticket prices and number of attendees. Then it says solve the problem but keep the original values in the worksheet and generate the answer report. So we're going to click on Solver. And we want to solve for the highest possible net profit. So set objective balance, which is the name of this cell. So if it's not in your worksheet, you're going to click on balance down here. Set objective balance or net profit to the maximum. And we're going to do it by changing these cells. I'm going to go ahead and delete these constraints so that I can show you how they work here in a second. But by changing cells, and I want to change the cell for a number of attendees and ticket price per person. Again, I hold down Command to change those cells, but that's where I want to do it. I'm actually going to close this solver. I'm going to click back on this worksheet and do it again. So when I open the solver, change balance, I wanted to get rid of where it said budget, the worksheet name, so I go back into it and just have the cells. Now I want to add what's called a constraint. A constraint is something that tells solver it has a maximum or a minimum value, or it can only be a whole number, or it can only be positive, or a variety of things. But we're going to set the constraints based on what we know from our worksheet. So here, let's add a constraint. And I want to say my number of attendees must be less than or equal to the maximum number of attendees. So my number of attendees less than or equal to the constraint of 500. So I'll add that one. My number of attendees must be greater than or equal to my constraint of 200. Oh no, sorry, don't do that because I don't have a minimum number of attendees. What do I have a minimum number of? How about ticket price? So let's do ticket price is going to be greater than or equal to $50. We'll add that one. And ticket price is also going to be less than or equal to $100. And we'll click add. I'm going to click OK so I can check these and cancel so I can see my list. So ticket price B12 must be less than or equal to B18, must be greater than or equal to B17, B7, which is my number of attendees, must be less than or equal to B15. All of that makes sense. Lastly, what I want to do is I want to say, hold on. Set objective net profit. I need to be clicked in the right place. So set objective, go back and delete this and say this one. And I'm going to go down here and add one more constraint. I want my number of attendees to always be an integer, meaning I need my number of attendees to be a whole person. So I click OK. So now I have 4 constraints in here, and I'm going to make it solve this problem for me based on these parameters, these constraints. So now I click Solve. And you'll notice that I get solver results. I want an answer report, and I want to, it says keep the original values. So restore original values, give me an answer report, and I'm going to click OK. It's going to give me answer report 1 over here, and you'll notice that my maximum number is going to be 11,118 based on the parameters that I set. It's going to come down here, it's going to tell me which constraints were binding and which were non-binding. Number of attendees was a binding constraint, meaning my cell value reached its maximum. I have 500 attendees at $100 a person. That was also a binding constraint. My minimum price was not binding, so that was good. Now, I told you about this in class where I said you may or may not have the same answer here. Solver is very volatile, which is why we won't do it on an exam, and it matters how you have the rest of these numbers set to whether exactly you would get exactly the same answer as me. So if it's not, don't worry about it too much. But hopefully that helps you understand how I would ask these questions versus how Pearson asks them, as well as get you on the right track to your grader project. Thanks. Have a great day.